All right, welcome. Today, we're jumping into a really powerful vision for education from way back in the 19th century. And we're going to see what it can tell us about our own universities and maybe even our world today. Okay, so let's start with this. This idea comes from a 19th century thinker, John Henry Newman. And what he's laying out here is this incredible ideal that a university isn't just a place to learn stuff that's already known, but a place to actually imagine what could be, a place for brand new ideas to be born. But, and this is the core of what we're looking at, the source material for this explainer calls out a tragic discrepancy, basically a huge, sad gap between that amazing vision and the reality of higher education that we see all around us. Right, so to really get a handle on this discrepancy, we've got to first understand what Newman thought a university should be. And for him, it was about so much more than just getting a piece of paper that says you graduated. The whole thing was built on this concept of a liberal education. And the goal here was, well, it was huge. It wasn't about training you for a specific job. It was about shaping you as a whole person, building your character. And check out what he thought the result of this would be: a cultivated mind. The idea wasn't to churn out a more efficient worker, but to help form a thoughtful, well-rounded human being. You know, someone with good judgment, who could reason clearly, and who carried themselves with a bit of grace. And as soon as you hear that description, it just begs the question, doesn't it? It pulls you right out of the 19th century and into today. Does any of that sound like the universities we know now? So let's flip the coin and look at the other side of this comparison, today's university. And well, the picture that our source material paints is pretty different. The argument is that modern universities often feel like the exact opposite of Newman's ideal. Instead of being these exciting places for debate, they're described as being, super sensitive to tough questions, not very open to voices that disagree, and almost obsessed with everyone thinking the same way. And this quote just hits it home. Newman imagined a university where different ideas would clash and create sparks. But the source argues that what we see now is the criminalization of difference, a place where being different is seen as a problem. So this is where we get to the heart of it all, that tragic discrepancy. Let's put these two visions right up against each other and see just how stark the contrast really is.
This slide really says it all, doesn't it? You can see the shift right there. The search for holistic knowledge gets replaced with simple job training. Intellectual freedom gives way to intolerance. And that big goal of shaping a person's character, it gets pushed aside for making money. And you have to wonder, when a society makes that trade, what kind of citizens does it end up with?
Which, of course, leads to the big question. If this gap is real, how on earth did we get here? Well, the source points to a few key things that it believes are driving this change. It really boils down to three main problems. First, universities have lost their independence. They're run more like corporations now. Second, there's this big pivot towards making a profit above all else. And third, what the source calls an unholy nexus, a messy mix of politics and opportunism that just squeezes out the space for real academic freedom. And all of this leads to a really powerful conclusion. A university has to be its own thing. It needs freedom to work. The moment you try to run it like a corporate farm or a military operation, the source says you basically kill what makes it special. It becomes useless. Okay, so after all that, it sounds pretty bleak, I know, but the source doesn't just leave us there. It actually suggests that not all is lost, and it points to a little glimmer of hope. And here it is. The reason universities are still kicking, according to the author, is because of the people inside them. It's the dedicated teachers and researchers who are still in there, day after day, fighting to keep that original spirit of free thinking and real education alive. So, we're left with this one final, really essential question to think about. It goes beyond the 19th century and speaks directly to us, right now. For our society, for our future, what is the university actually for? It's something we're thinking about.